So we worked with a wind consultant out of Canada to model the things and find out about it. And basically the main thing was to create laminar flow. So rather than turbulent flow using these vanes, you can actually control the wind and have it happily turn the corner without noticing. And then to deflect it again at the bottom. And then we have half of them facing in one direction, half in the other. So you create positive pressure on one side of the car park and negative on the other, and that should draw the wind through. We still have to provide all the mechanical ventilation required under the regulations, but with this device and using carbon dioxide sensors, we're hoping that the ones that are in the first basement are not often used. And one thing we thought was quite nice was I think modern mechanical equipment is almost universally ugly, but these are elements that can be quite beautiful, so they form a kind of motif through the landscaping and the public areas, and something that we can light up beautifully at night. So these are some of the first ones that have been finished, and I think you can see something of that whole Charles Correa attitude towards form making and space. So here you can actually walk up a staircase and cross a bridge from this element. So turning these things in a way that are just functional into sort of a romantic landscape, or like almost like ruined elements that you can walk around on. Another element is we've been developing a kind of jali, a precast breeze block element in a way that's something a little more elaborate. And so this walkways lead all around the project between the towers. We were a bit shocked when we were showing it to the signage people, and they went, "What are these walkways for?" And we went, "Oh, so people can walk from the tower to the club." And they went, "No one in Mumbai walks." They'll go to the basement, get in their car and drive across the basement to the club. But we're hoping that's not the case. Just some other views as it's coming up. This is the club where we're developing a kind of screen using a sort of bead element, which is derived from some of the older Indian architecture. And the other thing we feel is, we thought could be quite an Indian element, is the idea of repeating elements at different scales, so having small pavilions and big pavilions that dot around the place. So these are pleasure pavilions, a little like the pavilion that we saw today at your roof terrace, Mr. Nyotia, where can lounge around on day beds and enjoy views of the common area gardens. Next one we're doing in Worley. It was interesting project in that after the experience of New Cuff Parade, the previous one, Loda, the developer, Abhishek, was saying, "Oh, we need to." It's very difficult to keep launching one phase after another when the towers are all the same. So in this case, we thought we needed quite different towers. So every time they launched a project, there was something new to talk about and something addressing different aspects at the same time, having some commonalities in terms of things we thought were really important. So in this case, although they're expressing different aspects of architectural aspects, they're all again cross-ventilated, all with naturally lit lobbies, and in this case all incorporating a version of that window that you saw in the public housing, but something that we think is going to work better. It's a version of something we've tried out in Sydney. So all the facade have a acoustic ventilators built into the aluminium, so you can slide open the ventilator, you'll get quiet air and dust-free air into the apartment without, because a lot of people say they like the windows open but they don't like all the noise of the city. So here you can see the different floor plans of the different towers. So they're all variations on a theme where we use this expanded floor plate where the units are double-sided for cross-ventilation. You see crazy-looking cores. That's in some ways driven by the FSI, that the area in front of a lift is free of FSI. So you see a lot of lifts in the common areas. The other interesting thing, I think, from a structural point of view that we've been working with Sterling on both these projects is you'll see there's a much heavier line around here. So rather than using the core as the primary structural element, it's much more efficient to use a broader element as your main structural tube. So all of them have this. What you don't see is how this joins together as to make a tube. So in all cases we have quite interesting steel structures which knit together these walls to create a broad structural core. So here you can see, for instance, this diagonal lines are actually steel stitching together these shear walls so that the tower acts as a structural tube. What's horrifying about doing work in India is the size of the car parks, and while New Cuff Parade was horrifying in terms of how much underground car parking, and we were thinking, oh, it should really be above ground to make it naturally ventilated. When you actually have to deal with the above ground car park at this kind of scale, they're obscene urban lumps. But that's where we felt that the ideas that we developed on the Park Royal in Singapore were very suitable here. Since we had a mountain of car parking, it may as well be like a real mountain, because people love mountains, but they hate car parks. And if you can turn the car park into a sort of romantic pleasure garden, then there's nothing that offensive about it. So that idea was what drove the whole concept in the end of this huge development being like a neighbourhood built around a park rather than a big building. So you can see here some of this giant car park podium which runs all the way around here. So in the end it's a 4-hectare park for the residents, more of it being built here, and 7 stories tall and 4 hectares in size, so it's enormous. But the way in the end we develop it is as a huge garden. And the sides of it, we're treating some areas like the Park Royal in terms of a contoured landscape, which you can sort of see here as it winds around the site. And other areas we're doing, in some ways, a bit like a romantic Rajasthan fort, where the buildings are built into almost like a cliff face. One other thing we proposed to LODA, which we were very happy they accepted, was to make a living street edge with retail and dining and terraces and things along the front. I think one tragedy of Mumbai is that everything's becoming a gated compound, and it's a street that has such vibrant street life. By turning all the developments, turning their back on the street, I think it turns it over to really just itinerant and shanty constructions built outside. I think it's really important to have a variety of street life in the city and not just have walls and hawkers, but to have actual sort of high street shopping and that sort of thing as well, because I think unless you have that mix and you have buildings that are invested in the street outside their building, it will become a sort of hostile environment of a vast difference between inside and out. Here you can see some of the landscape around the car park. So my final project is one we just finished in Singapore last year. And this was one where we really thought we would push the green plot ratio to the maximum. So you can see we get 1,100%. So 11 times the site in terms of green area once all our facades are built. Also have, in terms of community, we have 4 full floor plates through the building which are dedicated to the uses of the end users in the building. So this was filmed when the planting was about half grown. It's 2/3 hotel and 1/3 Soho offices. The structure is all in the four corners, and then basically the room blocks just span between the sky garden areas. In this project we have 21 different species of creepers, so it's a little bit of an experiment, and also for biodiversity as well as resilience. We weren't sure whether some creepers would do very well and others do less well, so they're all battling it out at the moment on the facade. So the building is in Chinatown, and one partial draw was, it's completely out of scale with the shop houses, but we thought it was quite interesting to get a sense of the fine detail and the kind of proportion in the shop houses into the facade. So that drove this idea of the kind of delicate and window scaled proportion of the openings. Here you can see the floor plans. So the structure, as I mentioned, is these four corners. So they're for instance, passenger lifts on these two corners. These ones have the escape stairs and the service and fire lifts. And basically the building connects in an L shape around, joins the corners in different ways as you go around the building. And then we have, these are the four full floor plates where we have gardens and swimming pools for the users of the building. The section, and this is some recent photos, so you can see how hairy it's getting.